Hello, little Vickies. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight, I'll be sharing some glitch in the matrix stories from Reddit that are allegedly true. If you like what you hear, please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button as it's very helpful to me here on YouTube. If you have a suggestion or just want to say hello, please leave a comment. I always reply. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share, send it to veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. I upload every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday by 5 p.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it more than I can say. Now it's time to relax and get on with the stories. This happened about 2 years ago, and I was so blown away I took notes and told my wife about it, so I still have the notes on my phone. My 5-year-old son was pretty typical for his age, always goofing around, never serious, always working some angle to negotiate treats or buy whatever thing was at the top of his list this week. Kids have a selfish worldview, and that's mostly understandable because they haven't matured yet. So when my son asked me to go for a walk, just the two of us, I immediately laughed and thought, okay, what's he going to ask for? We start walking and I ask, what's on your mind, buddy? He said, nothing really. I just want to have some time to be with you and be peaceful and be out in nature. Wow, okay, this is progress, I thought. Then he said, I want you to know you're the best dad I've ever had. You really do help me and my sister a lot, and you're really very nice, even though we don't usually tell you. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything, and that I want to be near you always. By this point, the only reason I wasn't completely crying my eyes out is that I thought it was some kind of a joke or lead up to ask for something. This was totally out of character, especially at this age. I managed to croak out something like, I'm really glad to hear that, and I love you very much. Then we just enjoyed the rest of the walk. It really felt like for a moment I was speaking to a soul who has had several lives. For example, you're the best dad I've ever had, and wanted to speak directly to me instead of play the role of a child. I'm so glad it happened, and it's something I will never forget. Later, he went right back to being the same old goofy kid that I love. So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next-door neighbor late in the evening asking if I can help him move a mattress into his upstairs. His mom is ill and has a big heavy sleep number bed. I, of course, ran over to help because they're great neighbors. I get over there and his friend, who is also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed so we could fit it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help them move an armoire upstairs too. I think nothing of it, and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up the front stairs of his house. This is where I died. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armoire, about 6 steps up, when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armoire and it comes crashing down on me and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbor asking me if I can help move a bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, and this has been the first time I met him. I say I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armoire. My neighbor was like, how do you know about the armoire? I then proceeded to tell him I'm pretty sure I just died. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect detail down to the metal mattress frame on the floor and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall, and I had never been upstairs in their house before. The priest asked me what I saw after I died. I told him I never actually died. Before it happened, I woke up at my dining room table. I experienced my death, but woke up alive about 20 minutes earlier in my life. Me, male, 26, and my girlfriend, female, 25, have been living together in an apartment for 2.5 years. Everything has been normal until quarantine started around 4 weeks ago, when I started noticing some odd things. For instance, for the last 3 weeks or so, my girlfriend has been putting sugar in her morning coffee, while throughout our entire relationship she's always been very much against it. It may seem like a small detail, but she's always been complaining about how I don't know what real coffee is since I put quite a lot of sugar in. On the first day that I saw her drinking coffee with sugar, I asked her why she would do that, and she looked at me weirded out and said something like, "What are you talking about? I've always been putting sugar in my coffee." I felt a bit confused for a moment, but then we started talking about some other things, so I didn't think any more about it until the morning after, when she did exactly the same thing and had once again the same reaction. Fast forward a few days, and another odd thing happened. We were having sex, and she suddenly suggested a sex pose that we had already tried once, but it had gone wrong and it hurt her a lot, so we had simply decided not to try it anymore. Naturally, I was very surprised with her suggestion and reminded her about the time when it went wrong, and she just completely dismissed it, saying that I probably mixed her up with some ex-girlfriend or that I was just tripping. When we then did the pose, we actually enjoyed it. And then today, the weirdest thing happened, which is the reason I'm writing this post. In the afternoon, I was working at home. I'm employed as a PhD student at the computer science department of a university, when my girlfriend asked me what's up with a guy who I've never heard of before. I asked her who she was referring to, and she said, "Well, it's that colleague of yours who you always talk about, the one from the company where you're employed." I froze and asked her to repeat, and she said the exact same thing all over again. Then I told her I don't work at any company, nor have I ever worked at any company, since I started a PhD straight after my master's degree. At this point, she also completely froze, and we were just staring at each other, completely confused and shocked for a few moments. She then asked me what the fuck is going on, and I reminded her about the coffee thing and about the sex pose, and that I don't know anymore what's going on. At this point, she started crying too and asked what is wrong with us. She, nor me, nor anyone in both families have ever had any mental problems in the past. We don't know what to do about this. Can anyone explain what's wrong with us? Me and my daughter witnessed something surreal and unexplainable today. For a few weeks before this, while out driving, I've observed pedestrians standing at the traffic lights who will reach into their pocket and look at their phones as they're walking across the road when the light goes green. Nothing significant or strange about this, just one of those mundane things you notice while going about your day. Today, I was driving with my daughter, and we stopped at a red light at a crossing, and there was a man standing there. Nothing out of the ordinary, denim jacket, black cap, glasses, around 6'2". I thought I'd try to weird out my young daughter. She's 5, so I knew I was going to blow her damn mind. So I said, "See that man? When the walking man goes green and he starts to walk across, he'll reach into his pocket and pull out his phone and start looking at it. Watch and see." As he walks across, he reaches into his pocket, but then immediately takes his hand out and looks and points right at me with his mouth open, smiling like a gotcha stance. Of course, my daughter found this absurdly hilarious, and I sat there completely mind-blown. I must have sat there in silence looking at him walk across for the next 10 seconds. I drove on and had a look at him as I drove past, and he was smirking/laughing. I've been playing it through my head all day. The windows were up. The radio was on. I wasn't shouting. My voice was not even remotely raised. He must have been about 15 to 20 feet away from me. I can't figure out at all how he could have heard me. It's literally impossible. How did he know I was going to predict he'd reach into his pocket for his phone? The only even remote possibility I can think of is that he has had the same observation as me and thought I might be thinking the same thing, so just went for it. But realistically, what are even the chances of this? About 30 seconds ago, I was sitting on the couch as my dog walked by to go sit on her bed we have behind the L part of the sectional. She had something small caught in her throat last night, I think a popcorn shell, so I was paying attention to her breathing just to make sure she got it out. For a few minutes she was breathing fine, and then what sounded like a light snore started happening. This is semi-normal for her depending on what position she's laying in, so I didn't bother to go over and check on her. That went on for about 5 minutes until the most disgusting and, to my now realization, terrifying snore/cough/wheezing sound started happening. I go over to make sure she's okay, and the exact moment I looked at her bed, the sound stopped mid-breath, and she wasn't there. She was outside with my parents, had been for around 30 minutes. There's no way to get out of the room without walking right past me. I don't know whose fucking dog I saw and what was making that creepy-ass sound 5 feet away from me, but I'm going to be staying outside for the rest of the day and hiring an exorcist. This happened yesterday and still makes me uncomfortable. I was at the train station on my way back from work when I saw a couple. What drew my attention was the fact that they were speaking my language, so I looked at them. The woman was built and looked exactly like me, and I don't have a very common appearance for the country I live in, but about a decade older, and the man was an aged carbon copy of my current boyfriend. But what really set my creepy radar off was the following. She had the tattoo I always wanted to get, exactly where I wanted to get it. And it's a very personal design only my best friend knows about, so not a common tattoo. He was speaking my native language with a very distinctive accent of his home country, which is similar but not the same as the way people from the country we live in speak my language. So I looked at them when they were facing the other way, feeling extremely creeped out. It was then that the woman turned around and saw me, freezing instantly as if she had seen a ghost. Then I finally managed to look away and run toward the exit. I really feel like I'm going insane here. It was as if she, or I, remembered that exact moment and knew exactly when and where to look for me. I didn't tell anyone because I don't want them to think I'm completely nuts. Let me preface this by saying there has always been creepy shit happening around me, and I have several stories of my dad's old house which myself and my siblings all agree is haunted as fuck. I also had my dead best friend visit me twice, which was nice. So this evening, my partner, 42, male, and I, 30, female, were upstairs sorting laundry when his daughter, 17, called us downstairs as dinner was ready. I was headed down the stairs, my partner right behind me, literally 2 steps behind me. He did his usual thing of tickling the back of my neck as we walked. The bottom of our stairs is wooden, so you can hear when somebody steps onto it from the carpeted stairs. When we got to the bottom, his feet hit the floor as usual. I turned to ask him something, and he wasn't there. He wasn't fucking there. I totally froze for a second and looked up the stairs, and there he was, on the top step, pale and shaking. I asked him what the fuck just happened, and he kept saying, I don't know. I was behind you, and before I hit the bottom, the next step took me back upstairs. We are very freaked out. Didn't say shit to our girl, as she is already leery of this stuff, although he and I are somewhat used to it. I'm trying to get the courage to leave my laptop recording audio overnight because there definitely is something weird happening. I was just talking to my partner about the jump while we were cleaning our bedroom, and the second he made a joke about spooks, our bedroom door and bathroom door just slammed shut one after the other. I'm chalking it up to our bedroom window being open a crack. I don't want to think of alternatives. So, my best friend was also the love of my life. We broke up very amicably, and he moved abroad to get married. I never stopped loving him. Unfortunately, things didn't go well for him, and he turned to drink. I would get up at stupid hours to go on MSN to him and chat on webcam. He told me his marriage was over and he was coming home, and we made some plans to help him cope with things. We were going to go see our favorite band together, get tattoos together, and he said he'd like to maybe give us another go. I was over the moon, of course, not only because of the chance we might be together again, but that my best friend was coming home because he needed help. We signed off as usual and went to my college classes. After a few hours, I got a call from his brother saying my best friend was dead. He had taken a lot of drugs and shot himself. His death coincided with when his wife was coming to sort out divorce stuff. His mother, who lived in the same country, found him, and it destroyed me. It took a lot of work to get his body home for burial, but we did it. I was in a very bad way. I was drinking heavily, self-harming, suicidal, and was suffering from bulimia. I told his family I couldn't face his funeral, but that I would go to their house afterwards to stay the night in his room. We had done this a few times since his passing, his whole family in his room. I was alone in my house, reading, when the radio went weird and his favorite song started playing. That in itself wasn't unusual, as I lived in the mountains, which always fucked with signals. Then I got that feeling someone was standing behind me. You know the one, that precise feeling that you're being watched. I got a bit creeped out, but then the weirdest shit happened. I smelled him. I smelled his leather jacket, his apple shampoo he used on his long hair and beard, as well as his own natural smell, spicy and warm, like hot whiskey, and that woody smell like a fireplace. And that made me realize this was real, because I can never make myself imagine a smell. I froze completely and was too scared to turn around. I didn't know if I'd see him, or if I did, would he look how I remembered, or would it be him with his face blown off? I was scared and just kept pretending to read my book, and then I heard a very soft, gentle chuckle which was distinctly his. He laughed like Beavis and Butthead, a really nasally chuckle. Once I heard that, I relaxed. I felt safe, and instead of feeling like I was being watched, I felt looked after. I began bawling, crying, telling him I missed him, I loved him, I was so sorry I didn't see how much he was suffering. I was so sorry for letting him go in the first place. And then I felt warmth on my back, like someone was rubbing it. Heard his little chuckle again, and then it was gone. That's not the weirdest part. The radio flicked back and my phone rang. It was his brother who asked me was I okay, because he had gotten a weird feeling a few minutes ago and something told him to call me. I explained what had happened, and he laughed and said, "Oh shit, you better talk to my mom." He hung up, and before I could dial her number, my friend's mom called me and said, "The weirdest thing just happened. You won't believe it. But I swear I smelled my son's shampoo, the fruity one he used, and I think I heard him laugh, too." I ended up staying in my friend's room with his brother and mother for a few nights, which was nice. I've seen him a few times since that experience, and each time I do, I get a little closer to him. I went from spotting a dude who looked like him on the other side of the street to seeing him walk around a corner right in front of me and vanish. This technically happened last night, but I was just starting a graveyard shift and am only now getting it all down. I work at a gas station chain with only numbers in its name. We're just outside of a large chunk of suburbs. We aren't exactly near any other businesses, but we are rarely completely dead for hours at a time. It was just past midnight, and with everything going on in the U.S. right now, not a lot of things other than gas stations and bars are open at night anymore, so it was a slower evening. I was the only one in the store, and a car pulled up to one of the double-sided pumps out front. Pretty standard white four-door. I'm not great with car brands, but it was a little nicer, like upper middle class and probably only a few years old. A woman gets out and starts walking toward our door like she's in a daze. Legit, this woman looked like she saw a ghost. She wanders up, sort of freezes at the door for a second with a 1,000-yard stare before opening it and coming in. She didn't go looking for anything, didn't start shopping, just sort of stood inside for what felt like ages. Again, bars are still open, so I think maybe she's a little drunk or had a rough night or something, so I give the usual, "Welcome to our store, let me know if you need any help finding anything." And she finally notices me and immediately asks me the weirdest damn question I have ever been asked on the job. "You can see me, right?" "Yeah. Like, what else do you say?" She breaks down crying in the middle of my store, so I'm already headed around the corner to see what's up. I have my cell phone out in case I need to call the cops or something for her. I get her to sit down on a nearby pallet of soda, and I'm grabbing her a bottle of water, and after she catches her breath a little, she tells me, "I thought I had died." Again, I'm thinking maybe she's on something, but she's a middle-aged woman who looks like a standard local suburban housewife. We're a pretty boring township without your average junkies like you'd find closer to the cities. So she asks if she can call her husband to pick her up and wait with me. She has her own phone and does so, not really telling him anything either, just where she is at and if he can come get her. He says he'll call an Uber and be there as soon as possible. We're waiting. So far, nobody else has shown up, so I'm keeping most of my attention on her, and eventually she starts to explain to me. "I was driving home from dinner with my coworkers, and as I'm driving through a nearby intersection, a truck ran a red light and hit me." Now, her car is still at the pump without a scratch on it. She goes on to say she remembers her car being pushed into a pole, going airborne, and then nothing. I tried to calm her down, letting her know that her car is out front and it looks fine, but she insisted that she completely blacked out, woke up in an ambulance for a split second, passed out again, and then woke up again in the driver's seat of her car at the intersection waiting for the light to change, perfectly fine. This whole thing freaked her out so badly that she drove to the nearest anything, which was us, just so she could get out of the car. The husband eventually showed up to get her. He asked if I had any idea what happened, and even though she sort of explained to me, I just shrugged because, no, I had no idea what was happening anymore. She reluctantly got into the passenger seat of the car, and he drove them back home. That was hours ago, after which I worked an entire shift at the station trying to wrap my head around what the absolute hell I had just witnessed. I grew up in a densely forested rural area in central Virginia, and like most kids my age, 10 at the time of this story, I spent a lot of time playing in and around the woods. My best friend and I had found a creek one day while exploring different deer trails through the woods. This creek we happened on was a very rare find and the perfect spot for us to play. It was wide and deep enough to swim around in and had nice, soft, mossy banks on either side to rest on after we had tired ourselves out. The water was cool and clear, no copperheads and no mosquitoes because the water was constantly running. We were psyched. After a few hours of swimming, we had to walk back home for lunch, but made plans to pack lunch the next day so we could have a picnic on the creek banks and spend the whole day there. The next morning, we set out for the woods at around 1 p.m., planning to have the picnic first and swim after. We entered at the same spot we had the previous day and followed what we thought was the same deer trail. It was not. At the point where we should have found the creek, we walked into a small clearing that was covered in huge, thick ferns. We had definitely never walked this path before, or past this. So being both hungry and tired of walking, we decided to eat in the clearing. We laughed and played around there for a while, spitting watermelon seeds at each other from our lunch. It was an absolute blast, and we were both in wonderful, giddy moods. That all changed, however, as soon as we packed up and set back out to find the creek. As we walked on, the woods started to feel darker and colder. We got skittish, and I noticed my friend kept whipping her head around to look behind us. After about a half hour of walking, we came up on what looked like an entire overgrown bathroom. Sink, toilet, and bathtub all sitting arranged together and covered in ivy. It's pretty common to find weird shit like this in the middle of the woods, so we just walked on and made jokes to lighten the mood, calling it Bigfoot's bathroom. After another hour of walking and not seeing anything we recognized, we started to panic. Instead of trying to reach the creek, we were now just trying to find our way back home or out of the woods at least. I told her we should follow the sun and eventually we would come up on a road or someone's property where we could find help. She insisted on another way, and we began yelling at each other out of fear and, let's be honest, little girl bossiness. I told her if she thought she was so right, she should just go her way and we would see who got out first, so we split up. Now, as an adult, I fully acknowledge I was being a stubborn brat and also an idiot. Worst possible thing we could have done. Not 10 minutes after splitting up, I began to hear someone walking maybe 100 feet behind me. Thinking it was my friend deciding to go my way after all, I slowed down so she can catch up to me. Instead, whatever it was matched my pace. I slow down, it slows down. I stop, it stops. This went on for hours. The whole time I was going back and forth on whether or not it was in my head or there was really something following me. I picked up a big stick, swung it a few times to make sure it was sturdy if I had to hit someone, and trucked on. As it began to get dark, I came upon something that made my heart sink into my stomach. It was Bigfoot's bathroom. I had just walked in a huge circle for hours, despite being 100% sure I was following the setting sun west the entire time. Confused and frustrated, I sat down on a log and just screamed my little heart out while smacking my whoop-ass stick repeatedly into the ground. As I tried to collect myself, I heard the footsteps again walking up on me from behind. I called out my friend's name as loud as I could. No answer. Then, after a short pause, the steps began to run towards me. I jumped up and booked it as fast as I could in the opposite direction. Now this is the truly horrifying part, which I typically omit while telling people this story. As I was sprinting through the darkening woods, I began to hear what I thought were church bells. I looked up to see the darkest, deepest cloud I have ever seen in my life. In the middle, it was so black it was like looking into the night sky, and the dark gray around it seemed to be swirling. It gave me a horrible feeling to look at, almost like the nausea you get when looking through binoculars too long. What sickened me further is that I realized the sound of the bells was coming through the hole in the cloud. They were deafeningly loud, really booming out of this thing. When I realized this, I stopped dead in my tracks. I felt a sense of absolute and overwhelming dread that has gone unmatched in all my 24 years on this planet. Something in my head began screaming that if I did not run away from whatever the hell the cloud was, no one would ever see me again. I would be gone. I did not want to run toward the thing chasing behind me either, though, so I made a sharp right and took off away from both. It was now completely dark, and I was running blind through the woods, smacking through branches, wheezing and tripping every few feet for what seemed like another hour, until I smacked into something low and flew over it, hitting the ground so hard all the air in my lungs was knocked out of me. As I lay there trying to recover, I realized I couldn't hear the bells anymore. Then my eyes adjusted more to the dark, and I realized what had just made me go ass over teeth was an old fence. Grabbing hold of it, I prayed it would lead me to a farm, and sure enough, it did. I walked up over a hill about a mile to the back of the farmhouse, explained what had happened, and the farmer graciously gave me a ride back home. I was covered head to toe in scrapes, oozing blood and more exhausted than I had ever been in my life, but I was finally safe. It was past 9 p.m. when I finally walked through my front door. My friend had gotten back shortly after we split and figured I had as well, so hadn't told anybody I was lost, and my family just figured I was still out after dark, which wasn't uncommon for me. They were shocked when I walked in beat up and crying. Nobody had been looking for me at all. To this day, I wonder how long they would have waited to come find me if I hadn't been lucky enough to find the fence, and if it would have been too late. Hello again, little Vickies. Thanks for listening. Please remember to subscribe and hit the like button, and turn the notification bell on so you can be notified every time a new video uploads. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. Thanks again, and until next time, be good.